Good afternoon, everybody. I'd like to thank all of you for being here with us, and thank especially the NHLA for the opportunity to sponsor today. Renee, if you're in here, you've done such an amazing job with the convention. John, with all of us members, yes, they're not here, but everyone on staff at the NHLA does such a great job. Today, we've got our panel on AI and ale. So if you don't have a beer, you can get those there. We're going to be talking about the technology and drinking the beer. And with us today on our panel, we have Susan Colomb, who's a general manager at J.D. Irving, Josh Green, who's the operations engineer at Middle Tennessee Lumber, and from Cascade, our Mike Fitzgerald wasn't able to make it, so we've had to settle for John Cyree and Rick Barrett. So this afternoon, I'm going to try to keep things conversational. I'll get us started, and then our panelists will introduce themselves and their companies, and then I'll take us through some questions, and then we want questions from all of you. And after the panel, everyone's invited to join us for a site tour of Robinson Lumber Company's concentration yard in New Albany, Indiana, which is about 14 minutes from here. There are buses that I think will be available to load up at 2:30 immediately following this, and they'll be, I think, running until about 3. There was a sign-up sheet, but you're welcome to join whether you signed up or not. It's all very easy. And I believe the buses are picking up from the Liberty Street side, which is not the main entrance with the registration desks. In many ways, I think our lumber yard is a microcosm of the industry. My father, Toto, built it in the late 80s. It's no nonsense. We focus on quality and value addition, not volume. We're really proud of the high quality product that we put up for our customers. What makes it tick is the incredible team we've got. Many of them have been with us for 10, 20, sometimes 30 years. And a lot of the equipment's been there for 30 plus years as well. Alongside it, we've continued to invest in new things. So next to an old chain, you'll see a brand new vision tally as an example. There's more to talk about. We'll save for this afternoon. And one thing we're particularly excited about is our new container loading system that we'll demo for you. I've been coming to the NHLA since I was a kid. I grew up in the industry, probably violated some child labor laws along the way. A lot's changed, but a lot hasn't. On balance, I'll go out on a limb and say that our industry probably hasn't kept up with the pace of change around the world. And technology in particular is changing faster than ever before. And if you've been reading about what's happening with artificial intelligence, it's just the beginning. Yet we're an industry that's proud of its traditions. John, you highlighted this morning that the NHLA is 125 years old. Robinson Lumber Company is 130 this year. So take that. That's right. Well, it means I get a special lanyard that you didn't get. In our industry, we celebrate old companies. We celebrate family businesses. We celebrate the grit and tenacity required to make a living doing this. Technology, not so much. Last night at dinner, I sat next to Jordan McIlvain. I don't know if Jordan's in here. But he's one of the few people I think who can brag about having a 200-plus-year-old company. Jordan, do you have a special badge? Maybe not. And we were goofing around, and he said that he's thinking about getting into the technology business so that he can sell people software and be a 225-year-old software company. And funnily enough, in our industry, that might sell. So with that, we're going to get into some of the automation and technology used by our panelist companies here. We've got a couple presentations to share. Susan and Josh have prepared presentations. John and Rick are just going to wing it. And Susan, I think you can get us started.
All right. Well, thank you very much, Garner. All right. Well, good afternoon, everybody. My name, as Garner said, is Susan Colomb. I'm with J.D. Irving Limited, and I I thought I would start a little bit by introducing J.D. Irving, because I think a lot of times I find myself here and a lot of people haven't heard of us. So I thought I'd give a little bit of an overview of our company. So our company was founded in 1882. So the guy on the far, because if you're looking left, your left over there is James D. Irving. He's our namesake. It started with a sawmill and a general store in Bucktouche, New Brunswick. And then his son grew that business, K.C. Irving in the middle. And then on the far right, you see Robert Irving, James K. Irving, and J.D. Irving, who are still active. They're the third and fourth generations and are still active in the business today. And they've grown that sawmill and general store into an international company that has 19,000 employees and operates in 8 diverse sectors, from forestry to construction and equipment, consumer products. We have tissue mills, diaper plants, food, retail distribution, the largest shipbuilder in Canada, and transportation and logistics. We have rail, trucks, and agriculture. So we have a French fry business in food. So we also have land, and we also grow, as well as trees, we grow potatoes. All right. Another thing that we're very proud of is our forest supply chain is carbon neutral. It's been certified by a third party, by the Carbon Trust, to be carbon neutral. So we're one of the few, if not only, companies that can say that without buying any credits due to our forestry practices. Over the last 70 years, we've planted over 1 billion trees, so we're naturally carbon neutral. We're one of North America's top 5 private landowners. We have 3.2 million acres of private timberland. Our total lumber production is about 1.2 billion board feet, mostly softwoods, but we do produce 40 million board feet of hardwood, maple and birch. And we also have a drying facility where we dry 8 million board feet of maple and birch. It's just a little map of our operations. Our head office is in St. John, New Brunswick. And what we have operations, our hardwood mill is in northwestern New Brunswick. The dark green is our timberlands. We also manage 3 million acres for the province of New Brunswick. That's the light green. And then you see our facilities. We have tissue plants in Fort Edward, New York, Macon, Georgia. We have French fry facilities in North Dakota and in Toronto, Ontario, and as well as Prince Edward Island. So that's a little bit about our company. Thought I'd talk a little bit about our journey, and I don't feel like much of an expert, but we'll certainly share the things that we've done and what we've learned. So we've had automated grading systems in our softwood mills for a long time. In hardwood, our first automated grading system was installed in 2014 at I will say our veneer mill, and everybody thinks it's a veneer mill, but it's actually the veneer mill. So the story to that is there used to be a rail siding there where we would rail veneer logs to the veneer mill. And we put the mill there and the name stuck. So I know it confuses a lot of people when we say veneer. It's not a veneer mill. It's located at the veneer siding. So we installed that in 2014. I think we were one of the early adopters. We were the second or third to do automated grading in green hardwood lumber. In 2018, we started our journey with robots. We piloted our first 2-axis robot, and what that is, it's a robot that will go in 2 directions. It goes up and down and forward and back. So we use vacuum grippers or something to lift an entire layer of lumber at a time. In 2019, we were feeling more confident of that. We did another installation of a bigger system that now would do 2-inch spruce. And then in 2020, we did our first 6-axis robot, which means it articulates. So it'll move in 6 different directions. So that was our first one. It was small to pile 2-foot lumber. We learned a lot, again, from that. Wasn't without bumps, but we learned a lot. And in 2022, we installed 2 large 6-axis robots at our hardwood mill that pile all of our ties and our cant stock. And so that, that was a big project for us. It was, to our knowledge, the first of its kind to do that. The challenge that we were facing, much like I'm sure many of you, is workforce. That was traditionally where people started, and it became where people sent their kids to try to convince them to go back to school because it's hard labor, and it was just constant turnover, A lot of injuries were happening there. So, it was worth it for us. Took us about 3 months to really get back up to our post installation production. It was not without a learning curve, but now they work great. They work through breaks. They don't complain. They don't have bad days. It's we're very, very happy that we've done it. In 2023, just this past June, we did the artificial intelligence of the AI trim expert that we installed in 2014. And now we're getting ready, and I won't talk much about it because the experts are sitting at the end of the table, but we're getting ready to install the first CT scanner in Canada at our hardwood mill. So that's going to go in February of 2024. So we're pretty excited. I'm looking forward to hearing a little bit more about that. So a little bit about our learnings. Computers and robots are 100% repeatable. This can be a very good thing because they do the same thing over and over again. You program it in, you say, these are the specs for that grade, and it's going to do it over and over again. But it can be a very bad thing because if you make a mistake or tell it to do something that doesn't make sense, it will do it over and over and over again. So it can't be hands off. You really need to be watching it and own it and make sure that you're constantly checking and calibrating that it's doing exactly what you want it to do. I remember years ago, before we put any automated grading, second shift was just starting. I was walking through the mill and saw one of the graders and hey Derek, how are you today? And he's like, oh, I'm tired. And I'm just like, you are about to spend the next 10 hours being the only line of defense between us and our customers and deciding kind of how profitable this shift is, and you're already tired. So certainly from that perspective, having automation takes that variable away from it. But you can't eliminate the human element because, to my second point, it's artificial intelligence, that they don't have judgment. They don't know what you meant to say. And, a good operator or a good grader, if you ask it to do something and they'll be like, really? Because if I do that, then this is going to happen. A robot and a computer will just go, okay, and just do that. So they'll never replace a good operator and a good skilled person, but they really are there to enhance and kind of increase the flexibility that we just can't do at the speeds we want to go with humans. But if I had my way, everybody in the mill would be a certified grader and they'd be looking at that piece as if they were the customer buying it. The reality is we just can't get our workforce with the turnover that we have and the challenges we have trying to get people. We can't get our workforce back to that level that it once was. So this is a great way to enhance it. Another thing that I'll say is lumber handling is really the key to success. That's been one of the bigger challenges that we've got. Back to the repeatability. You train it in a certain environment, and that's the environment that it will work in. So if it gets cold, if the wood's frozen, and all those types of things, it will behave differently, and you have to make sure that you're constantly watching that. Because the robot, you tell the robot to go 120 inches from the zero line, it will go 120 inches from the zero line. If the piece of wood is at 122, it doesn't go, and it just goes to 120, does its thing. If it's not there, then you get an error. So the conditions and the environment and the lumber handling have really been the biggest learning curve for us in all this. I will also say, choose your partners wisely. We've chosen some good partners that we've worked with. Not to say anything against the folks we haven't worked with, but I will say, the folks at Comac have been good. Microtech have been good. Yaskawa, they've been great partners for us to work with. It's not quite like choosing a spouse, but once you pick someone, you're going to spend a lot of time with them. There's going to be frustration, and really choose your partners that are going to be there and stick there with you. And again, it gives you a lot of flexibility. You can react to customer demands. Again, it's not like a person. It doesn't give you the same amount of flexibility. One of the things we've found is that we can get about 95% of what we had with humans, we can automate for a reasonable budget cost. Then the next 5%, to get to 100%, you end up with a cost-benefit dilemma that you're going to have to spend a lot of money to get that last 5%. So usually it doesn't justify it. And so we get 95% of what we used to be able to do. But in balance, it gives us a lot more flexibility. And, last point, automation can make jobs safer. They can make jobs much more interesting for operators. I think repetitive manual jobs that are difficult to fill is really the home for the home and use for this. And then skilled workers are becoming harder and harder to come by. And so, with the CT scanner, that was one of the biggest decisions is like, we're not going to be able to find people like we've had in the past that, a Sawyer with 25 years experience. There are no more of those coming. We have, Sawyers with 25, 30 years experience, and then we have some pretty new guys. So a big part of our decision is the lack of finding skilled workers, and also the lack of people to do kind of that repetitive type of work. So that's been a bit of our journey and our learnings. And I guess I'm not going to do questions because I'm going to turn it over to, right? You're going to do your presentation. All right. Well, we'll take questions after. Thank you.
All right. So I'm Josh Green. I'm with Middle Tennessee Lumber. We're primarily a hardwood flooring manufacturer, solid hardwood flooring, mostly white oak. I've got a really exciting presentation about tilt hoist. My choices were pull chain or tilt hoist, and I went with tilt hoist. Yeah. So just a little overview of why we're going to talk about a tilt hoist, because it might be the second most boring piece of equipment at our plant. The tilt hoist we have that is in our rough mill, so where we're taking things off sticks from our kilns, is roughly 20 years old. It was installed with a rough mill line that I actually worked on when I was 14 years old. And Mom sent me to work at Middle Tennessee Lumber because she wanted me to go to college, like you were talking about, and get a real job. So I got an engineering degree and then went and worked in automotive, and that really sucked. And so I came back to Middle Tennessee Lumber. So she basically made me go back to work where I've always worked. But that tilt hoist was there, and back when I was 14, 15 years old, and it worked the exact same way as it did, before we replaced it. And I was the guy that the sticks would come off on a conveyor belt and they'd shoot out onto the into our stick racks, and I had to like straighten them all out and had like the worst splinters ever. But in 2013, we completely redid our rough mill line and replaced it with a Lyco ripsaw line. And like with any project, the more we got into it, the more project creep we got, the more expensive it got. And so just one of the things that we decided to repurpose in order to keep the cost of that project down was like, we're going to reuse our old faithful tilt hoist. And so that's what we did. So we've been using that 20-year-old tilt hoist on this rough mill Lyco line since 2013. So going into COVID hit, everybody thought the market was going to hit, go into the crapper. It did the exact opposite. We couldn't keep up with our sales orders. And we started trying to build our inventory on our air dried yard and realized, that we were basically buying a load of drying sticks every month. See here, we had a $296,000 stick expense at our mill over the 2-year period prior to replacing this tilt hoist. And I mean, that's ridiculous, So we do 8-foot packs for what that's worth. So they're a little bit longer. They're more expensive, a little bit harder to get, a lot easier to break. The other thing we had in the previous iterations of our rough mill, we just had a chain deck bringing the lumber straight into the tilt hoist. So the lumber came all the way up to the uprights of our tilt hoist, which worked well. Well, when we reconfigured our line for this new Lyco line, it's actually coming in on a roll case at a perpendicular to the tilt hoist. And so there's a lot of transition time going from the end of one pack to the start of the next pack. There's 80-second transition time, or we go by cycle time. What that did is that required us to have a really long accumulation deck between where we start loading lugs and when it comes off of our tilt hoist, so that we can make up for that 80-second difference when we're not dropping lumber onto our chain. One of the ways we look at our efficiency of our rough mill is what percentage of our lugs are we filling. So at full speed on 8-foot lumber, we'll run 25 lugs a minute. We were getting a fill rate of about 80%, or not about, right at 80% lug fill rate, which meant we were getting 20 boards a minute as opposed to the potential 25 that our line is capable of running. So the incredibly high stick expense, to go back to that a little bit, we basically judged that the majority of our sticks were getting broken at our tilt hoist. And the next picture, some really high quality photos of our old tilt hoist. And the big thing I am going to use this laser. I'm going to take a chance here. One of the big things that would happen is because we weren't bringing the packs, you see this gap between the stick pack and the uprights right here, because we had to have enough clearance for that roll case to bring it in. We had about a foot difference between the edge of the pack and those tilt arms. So when we rocked that pack back, what would inevitably happen is these sticks would slide out, 12 to 18 inches from the pack. And it was much worse at the top than the bottom because they didn't have as much weight on it. And so as that pack would raise up, anything that it could catch on, it would catch on. And it would break, the first 6 inches or the 12 inches off the front of those sticks. So by the time it goes through our stick stacker, it'll drop anything out. At the time, it would drop anything out that was less than 7 foot. So you could sit there and watch our stick reclaim system fill up a good stick rack and a bad stick rack at about the same rate on certain days, certain instances. So this is really what we're trying to get rid of. It's crazy. We weren't, you think about automation, you think about machinery. So often we're trying to reduce head count. All we were trying to do is save tomato sticks. So that's a picture of our old system, or our old tilt hoist. So our proposal, or our project, what did it look like? We were going to replace the existing roll case that fed it, the tilt hoist itself, and our stick stacker. And we were going to add a crowding chain. So the reason we had to replace this roll case is because it needed to have the ability to go up and down, and so that we could use a chain deck to move that pack up against the uprights. Excuse me. The total project was going to cost $280,000. A secondary goal of this project was to reduce the cycle time between the end of the previous pack, and the next pack by at least 20 seconds, so 25. Basically, what we had figured is that we had accounted for about a minute's worth of cycle time between one pack and the next, and that our accumulation deck allowed for that. So we wouldn't ever run out of lumber in between packs as long as that transition took about 60 seconds. Well, since it was taking us 80 seconds, there was about 20 seconds of time where our lug loader didn't have material to keep replenishing the line. So, it's pretty easy math. You're processing roughly a board every 2 seconds. 20 seconds costs you 10 boards every time you do a pack change. Processing about 38 to 45 packs a day. So it really adds up. We set the bar really high at Middle Tennessee, okay? So we wanted to increase our lug efficiency by 4%. All right. We wanted one extra board per minute. That's all we wanted. So we were looking at $115,000 a year, though. That one board per minute, when extrapolated out through the whole year, would provide us about $115,000 process cost allocation. Basically, what way we handle our process charges is we know what each department is spending, rent, utility, direct labor, supplies, and we divide that across how many board feet we process through that department. And we realized if we could increase the production, by one board a minute, that's not that much, then we could actually save $115,000 or get $115,000 more of allocation spread across those products. And then we just wanted to reduce our stick expense by half. So we wanted to go from spending roughly $12,000 a month on sticks to $6,000. With those, that would be $74,000 per year. If we were able to accomplish both of those things, meet those goals, we'd have a 1.5 year payback. And typically at Middle Tennessee Lumber, if it's 2 to 3 year payback, it's a pretty much a slam dunk for us. We're going to go for it. So we went ahead and actually, I guess I kind of wanted this picture after the next, but this is a picture we decided to go with TS Manufacturing tilt hoist. And it was really, we'd had a lot of experience with LICO, and we really liked dealing with LICO. So obviously we had them quote it, and they had originally quoted a tilt hoist. But their design was basically the same design of our old tilt hoist with just the straight uprights. And because we're still bringing that material in at a 90-degree angle, even with a crowd chain, we're just really worried about how the sticks would react to that system. And so what we liked about TS's system is that it had the entire portion that the pack lays against is just a sheet of steel. So there is nowhere for the sticks to go. And there's nothing for it to hang on. It's just a flat piece of steel. So we really felt like that design was going to have the biggest impact in reducing our stick. I mean, again, the focus is just not buy sticks. We don't want to keep buying sticks over and over again. So that was the real main focus of this project. Seems really simple, but so what happened? So we issued the PO to TS in October 2020. It was height of COVID, awesome times, and so I had a lot of supply chain issues, a lot of different things. A hydraulic pump took like 9 months to get, which is shocking, but so it definitely pushed it out further. Like everybody else, we actually had a pretty good year 2020, so we were looking for some tax write-offs, hoping you can't get a tilt hoist in 2 months apparently. But so we got it installed August 2021, and we achieved actually all of our targets and a little bit beyond that. We went from 20 lugs a minute to 21.3 lugs per minute. So we actually, that equates to about a 5% efficiency gain. And our compared to the previous year, compared to 2020, we had $120,000 process allocation improvement. It's real money. And then we actually haven't bought a load of sticks since we put in the TS tilt hoist. So an actual 100% reduction in stick replacement cost. So all that together, that $220,000 savings, or excuse me, not $290,000 savings was actually virtually the exact same cost of the system together. So we ended up with less than a 1 year payback. I guess going back to like my history and working in automotive, we would spend, when I was working as a Nissan supplier, we would spend 9 months studying a problem to cut 1 cent out of a product. And, at Middle Tennessee Lumber, it's a much better environment because you're out there on the floor, you're out there watching the stuff run. Your gut tells you that that's a problem that needs to be addressed. You don't have to, do a P FEMA or a D FEMA, if any of y'all know what that is. It's just this is something that needs to be done. And so it's real easy. When you see a rack of broken sticks be generated every day, and those sticks cost $1.38 a piece, Like that's a problem that needs to be fixed. So that's our latest project, and hand it on over to the Cascade guys to go from there. Thank you.
Just checking if this is on. Obviously it is. Rick and I are pitch hitting for our colleague Mike Fitzgerald. Couldn't make it due to a medical issue. So have pity on us, please. We have his notes here, but these are our COO's notes, so they make no sense. So just kind of bear with me here. About 4 or 5 years ago, I reviewed, or I didn't even know I was reviewing it at the time, but I was looking at our facility and our manufacturing process at Cascade. I was looking at safety and other threats to our business, skilled workers, the ability to get skilled workers, whether they were grading lumber or they were sawing lumber. It was a threat. They all had gray hair. No one else was coming. Log expense was just constantly increasing. But year over year, my percentages of grades out of my log never changed. And even the diameter of the log was just minor changes. So I had these threats to the business. How can I utilize technology, AI, whatever we're going to call it, to alleviate these stresses on the business? And we looked at all the different aspects of the business, and I don't even think we really understood we were looking at it. We were just trying to be innovative. And we did a few small projects. And then about 4 years ago, I was here at the convention in the exhibit hall, and Microtech was here, and I think I went to a panel. And they said that they could see inside the log and tell me how to saw the log. It was black magic, quite candidly. So as we looked at the threats, we had to maximize every single log on the carriage. It was too expensive to just run more volume and just get more of the grades we wanted, because then we got the grades we didn't want. And two, I didn't have the resource, the log resource, to saw just that much more volume. All I would do was crank up the log price in our region and blow up the log market. So I had to be smarter with how we consumed the fiber. Move in place, Microtech CT scanning. The CT scanning technology can detect everything within the log. It's quite candidly. And it works. Don't really ask me how. That's the COO's job. I'm not the COO. The main impact on it was the cost of such an operation is obviously significant. And so we tested it in great detail to see what the increase would be. For example, and I'll just go through this testing process quickly. We batched, I think, how many segments? A truckload of logs, and we ran it to a CT scanner in Lewiston, Idaho, which is a several hour drive from our facility. And we ran through and created solutions for all of those segments. And we mapped all those logs, put those logs back on the truck, ran them back up to our facility. And then we knew virtually what they would grade out at. That model that's on the screen. Not telling our seasoned sawyer what the solutions were, we ran them in there and then looked at his best effort versus the machine best effort. And there was a significant uptick in that. And we ran a return on investment and said, this is it's worthwhile doing. So then we embarked on our CT scan install. Let's see, you want to speak on that part? Or?
So once we made the decision to go, then the fun really, really started. Cascade is somewhat unique, but very similar to a lot of all y'all's other businesses in that we had a lot of 30 and 40-year-old employees, not 30 and 40-year-old, but 30 and 40-year experienced employees, convincing them that technology was going to come in and play a role in what we were doing and not take their jobs was a huge part of what we had to do. So we really worked hard to get buy-in from all of the people that are involved. And in the end, it ended up being one of the most satisfying parts of the project. The 17-year experienced Sawyer that was worried about his job is now the head guy that runs the CT department and I think all of us need to realize that we uncover talents when we embark on a project like this that we didn't really realize our employees had. We did not know Shelby would be able to take to this the way that he has. Then the other benefit is we've now got 2 younger guys that are in the saw cabs because we're presenting them with solutions at both head rigs that are young gamers. They're very good with their hands and their feet and controls. But now that we are able to give them a solution, we can take, instead of 5 years, we can take 3 months and make a guy effective in the saw cab. So it's kind of like the same thing we think about Sawyers at one time. Saw filers were never going to go away, and now we've got all the automated filing equipment. We think we'll be able to do grading at some point. We need it to speed up and work laterally for us. But we also chose to do this right when the supply chain issues were so hard. So it took longer than we wanted it to take because our vendor couldn't get parts. Plus, we were all making really good money, and a lot of the softwood guys were really making good money. And so they punted us to the back. It was a little difficult getting vendors and getting contractors lined up to do the project. But just like any project, we have seen successes. As of late, about every other month, we've been running man versus machine tests. The pitfall right now is we know the uptick that we were getting 4 or 5 months ago. The Sawyers have now learned to think like the CT. And so it's masking some of the results because when we ask them to saw to their best efforts basis and turn the equipment off, they're actually seeing the log in a different manner than they used to see it. And so we have seen a little bit of an erosion in that number, but we don't believe that it's a true erosion. We just think that they've gotten that much better at sawing. Kind of as we look to the rest of this, John, I'm just trying to think what else we want to hit on. Yeah, we are a fairly small company, 240, 245 employees, something like that. And so we have a very talented staff, especially our lead IT guy is super, super talented. And we did a heck of a lot of the install ourselves. The electrical work, we also had a partner that's an electrical company that's just up the street, and they devoted a lot of full-time electricians to when we did it. In Traverse, they did a lot of the electrical install. But overall, having our own team, in the end, we think that it paid a lot of benefits because we now have buy-in, everything from purchasing to our machinists, to our electricians. They all played a big role in it. We made a big deal of the role that they played. And so now we've got a company that I think we truly have changed the culture from resisting technology to embracing technology. And so one of the benefits of this CT thing is going to be when we do the next step, whatever we choose for that to be, we're going to get a lot of buy-in all the way up and down our company. Why don't you hit on, the close.
On final thoughts, yes, the machine can see inside the log, and it can pull grades, and it can hunt for grades as you change values of grades and thicknesses, etc. To the point where the downside is it might chase after that grade so hard that you get something that you don't want. So you have to be very careful with how much you focus it. Susan, to your point, the machine is only as good as the information that you provide it for the decision that it is making. The one thing that's very critical is don't let sales touch the machine. Ever. And be careful with how many changes you make to the machine at any given one moment, because you don't really know what's going to happen. You need to let it be there, let it run, see what it does. And then on top of that, we have a group of 3 guys that any change to the machine needs to be all three of their decision together. One person cannot just control the machine. It is a very powerful thing. It will chase after something that you don't want it to chase after. And then all of a sudden, you've got 250,000 feet of something that you don't want. And then on the last thing, never repeat this, but don't let sales touch the machine. We had a successful install. We had our pitfalls. There are challenges from it. We are still learning. But from a safety point of view, as we reviewed our company from a safety point of view and where we were threatened, the SWOT analysis, skilled labor, increasing costs. How can you apply technology to decrease those risks to your company? That analysis is what's important. It may be something significantly large like a CT scan, or it might be something like we did earlier on, just an off-bearer, taking that person out from the off-bearer position to reduce risk for their health and their safety. Whatever it is, do that analysis of where the low-hanging fruit is so that you can go after the things that have the biggest bang for your dollar. And we found the CT scan was that way. But before that, there was a lot of smaller things. It's not always the biggest, fanciest thing that you want to chase after. Sometimes the ROI on something is dramatically different, and it may be a safety ROI.
Thanks, John. Well, those are incredible presentations. Thanks for sharing so openly about what's going on at your companies. It was really, really interesting to see behind the curtain. We've got about 15 minutes left, so I'd take an opportunity. If anyone on the floor has any questions they want to ask of any of our panelists, we've got a mic up here.
I might already know the answer to this question, but in looking at these AI projects, we have 2 concentration yards. So we've got old tilt hoists, very curious about replacement for that. We also have stackers where we have personnel placing sticks. So my question is, when you're looking at AI, is there an actual reduction of number of people in your mill? Is there a savings there, or is it more? Is the biggest gain on the efficiency and the safety, or we have trouble getting anybody in the door, not just the labor end of it, but really anybody in our environment, especially in New Hampshire. We have a lot of competition for even the skilled workplace. The lumber industry isn't always the first place they want to look for a job. So I'm just curious whether you collectively think that there's a reduction of personnel just in numbers, or if it's just more of the efficiency and more of the safety factor. Because obviously there is an ROI there. I'm just curious on the personnel part of it. Thank you.
It's an excellent question. And I found that each project was different. Some projects it was a reduction of labor and then moved in efficiency. In some projects, it was simply to move that individual out of an unsafe position. Other places, we reduced our threat to skilled labor, but didn't reduce actually the headcount. CT scan's a great example. I don't have a seasoned 15, 20-year veteran sawyer in the cab anymore. I could put a guy in there. Rick could saw. I could saw, because all you're doing is doing it. Don't let sales saw. So, but in the meantime, though, we have found the need to hire a very skilled computer individual. But then we've been able to spread that cost over other parts of our company. The skilled labor is moving away from the need for the sawyer skilled labor to the computer skilled labor.
I guess just to kind of reiterate what he said, I think it's a very project by project based kind of thing, as far as how you're if you're going to be able to reduce headcount or not. But one of the big things is you're actually end up looking for a different skill set that is actually much more widely available amongst the new workforce. So, when I was 15 years old, it was fun to go to the lumber yard and pull lumber. It was like a competition. Like if I could pull more lumber, then, you know, the grown men that were beside me, like I could pat myself on the back and feel like I'd done something. The people that we're seeing come in, they grew up with computers. A computer is nothing to them. But golly, picking up a piece of lumber, now that is hard work, you know? So, you know, even when what's crazy is you can actually, in my mind, be hiring a more intelligent, more skilled person and actually get away with paying them less because you're not asking them to, you know, pull a piece of lumber every 2 seconds. Because there's very few anymore, at least in Middle Tennessee, that want to do that.
Yeah, it's really about the same thing with our AI projects. I will say we did reduce how many graders we had online with that. That's the only AI project we've actually had a reduction in headcount. But with the automation projects, absolutely we have. You know, just to echo what these guys, and it's the same issue. Nobody wants to do that kind of work. I can tell you that I've eliminated positions, but I've never laid anybody off.
Any other questions out there? Well, I'd love to hear, you know, we've talked a lot about return on investment from different projects. What's next? Susan, could you tell us about a project that you all are currently looking at and it's on deck?
Well, the big one we have on deck is the CT scanner. You know, in February, that one it's committed. It's actually built. They sent me pictures. So we're waiting for it to come. So that's the next thing for us. And then probably, you know, I think we're going to have a long learning curve on that. So we're probably going to have our hands full for a while. But the next thing will be where else can we use automation? Where else can, you know, if there's someone that's basically just picking up a board and putting it down, where else can we automate those jobs? Really kind of where we're going.
And will you implement the CT for softwoods and hardwoods?
Right now, we're just doing it for hardwood mill, but we're going to see, you know, we tested it for both. We felt that it was a better fit for our hardwood operation, but we're certainly considering it depending on how it goes. But we want to learn all we got to learn first.
We're currently considering a couple different projects. We're looking at a scanner for our flooring line, for post side matcher for defecting. We currently manually board mark and run through a Dempter chop saw. So that's one of the things we're considering. And just kind of go back to a previous question, that will most likely, if we move forward, so it will reduce. We have two, we call them board markers, but 2 board markers currently. Ideally, that'll reduce that to 1 person, but it'll be 1 person that has to have those computer skills and that knowledge. So it'll be a combination. But that's really just to improve a little bit yield, but just consistency on our flooring grade. And then the other one we're looking at is a pellet mill. So those are the 2 we're considering at this time. No decision's been made on either one of those, but the pellet mill's not really intelligent. It's just,
Yet.
Oh, like they've mentioned, we're looking at grading, but we run a much higher volume than a lot of people do. So we're looking at how do we effectively grade about 220,000 feet on 10 hours at one mill and about 150 at the other. So we're waiting on lateral grading to catch up to where we can put that in the mills. We're also, like everybody else, if you listen to the CIA guy this morning and the changes in markets around the world, we're looking at how we can better saw to solutions instead of sawing simply random width lumber. We think the CT is actually helping us a lot with that. And so we're looking at, you know, how you go about making not necessarily components, maybe ripped to width, but just what we're going to do to attack more nearshored markets. I was just back in China 3 weeks ago, and almost the same exact thing that he said I saw when I was there. So I think we're all going to have to look at where we're taking markets. And so it isn't just technology. I think it's using the gray matter between your ears, and we're going to have to figure out that we're making the right products for the right applications as well. So that's the sales side of it.
Thanks. We've talked a lot about, are there any other questions out there? we've talked a lot about equipment automation. This has been the year of AI with ChatGPT, which we're all using, but we won't admit to it, right? I'd like to talk a little bit and ask you all some questions about management technology and how you see that evolving. And Susan, I wonder if you could tell us a little bit about how you would evaluate, where your own management systems are headed, if there are any plans to start to use AI, and maybe talk a little bit about how you evaluate inside development versus outside, vendors.
So no, I don't use Chat GPT. No. It's our policy. We don't. So no, we haven't really spent a lot of. That's the hot one that we've talked about. Right now we're saying that we're not going there. There's too much unknown. So that's where we are today. In terms, I think that the folks talked about it. In-house labor, there's a huge benefit. I think the buy-in that you get if you do it yourself. With our robotics, they sent us 2 robots on a pallet, and our team, it was a tough project startup, but we were kind of the first ones to do that. So our team figured it out. The buy-in that you get and the amount of ownership and understanding, if I had my choice, I would do it internal every time. But at the same time, we usually have a mill to run, and those folks are tapped out. So it's not always the option, but I would rather hire contract labor to maintain the day-to-day of the mill and use our own folks on some of these projects, because the vested interest they have, it's kind of priceless.
Great point.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's sometimes it's kind of confusing where do you draw the line between AI, and just, I guess not intelligent automation. I don't know. So one of the things we're really interested in, which sounds like these guys are already ahead of the game on us, but is being able to grade rough lumber, hardwood lumber on our stacker line. It's the percentage of lumber that we purchase from mills that is ungraded and paying on our grade and tally has just been increasing the entire 12 years I've been there. And so being able to standardize that process and do it quicker is probably, and now if that could tie into another sponsor of NHLA's convention DMSI software, that would be awesome too, because that's what we use. So somebody's got that figured out, let me know.
Garner, we're from a management point of view, our company is pretty darn flat. And so we have not really seen the need to do much in the way of AI in our management services side of our company. I think we're still running DOS. So I think that's solid.
You like the green. Well, are there any other questions out there for our panelists?
I am sitting in the audience listening to Rick Barrett speak on operational issues. How far can my career digress? That's what I'm kind of at. I will ask you this. On the grading application and on the log scanning applications, that kind of is as close as our industry is going to AI right now. With optimization and automation, you start it up, you have a performance guarantee with the vendor, and you get to that point. With AI, you are constantly training and retraining and developing. You've been going at it for about 2 years now. How close are you to where you want to be? Are you like 70%, 80%? How much continuous training are you doing on your grading systems and on your log scanning systems? I was just curious.
I can speak to the log scanning, and Susan, maybe you want to touch the grading. We believe that our CT scanner, we feel confident that the CT scanner is very accurate in seeing the defect, Bert, and it can actually detect the grade, create the grade, and we'll saw the grade out. We feel that we are successful in that. Every single week, it seems like the market changes. Every single 2 weeks, we're modifying which grade we are going to chase after. Where alder's a little quicker to dry and to be produced, so we have that ability. So I would say, Bert, we are modifying what we're doing every 2 weeks, revisiting it, looking at it, and then maximizing it to the log diameter that we see in the log yard. So when you run the CT scanner, every single log up to however much storage you want to buy from a computer storage point of view is stored. That solution is stored in the computer, in the cloud or wherever. Okay, so what you can do is if you have a 10-inch diameter log coming versus a 9-inch or whatever, right? You can run virtual simulations and see what the percentages of what you would gather out of that, and then decide how you're going to apply the values of the different grades, the different diameter logs, etc. So, to your question, Bert, are we satisfied with where we're at? My point in confusing everyone with my jumbled words is that no, I'm not satisfied, because it's constantly changing. Every moment it's changing. And so every single week we're adapting to a new real environment because the market's changing. The log system is changing. Everything is constantly adapting. So what is static is that the machine can see it, and the grades, it can produce the grades. It's which ones are we going to chase after, and the width of them, and the thickness of them, and all of that is constantly is in process. Maybe that gets to it, Bert?
On the lumber grade, I think, back to working with your partners, I think it's important for any of these projects to agree on your expectations up front, to have good, performance guarantees. It's like any kind of good contract. Agree with it up front so you don't have to fight about it later, so there's no gray. I would say with our green lumber grading, we're satisfied. Obviously, for our customers and for NHLA, we have to be at a certain level, and so we got there quickly with the AI upgrade this year. The first time around it was a little bit longer, but I would say that we're satisfied. We still keep a person there because we don't see rot well. Checks and splits are a little tough to see, so we still have one person there kind of as a final check. We would never let it go unsupervised. But I would say that we're always tweaking and trying to get better, but we got to our kind of level of acceptance with the supplier inside of about 8 weeks. So.
Well, thank you all for the good questions. Guys, I really appreciate your great insights in all of this and for sharing so much. And now I think the tour of the lumberyard starts in a little bit. There's buses downstairs that'll be heading over, and hope to see you all there. Thanks, everybody.